Hello. Today's video, Slow Stitching, Textured Element number 4, is the 4th video in the series of the same name. I show how you use fabric and thread to make interesting texture that you can incorporate into your slow stitching pieces. Now, we're not making a full project, I'm just showing the technique. And I store these on little tags that I keep on a little ring. This way I can go back and reference them and see how I want to add an element to my piece, kind of a simple element, using fabric alone. Now you'll get a different look depending on the fabric texture that you choose, whether it's silky or rough or plain or cottony, as well as the print on the fabric. So you can get something really elegant by using elegant fabrics and simple colors. You can get something whimsical, or you can get something very fun and classic. So here are my 2 processes for using fabric tags in my slow stitching. So here are my 2 methods of using tabs in slow stitching. This one adds a lot of texture and interest, and this one adds a little different shape to the piece, elongates it, and adds a little interest, whereas this side is a straight edge, this side has these little tabs, and you can add as many of them as you like. The look is completely different based on the fabrics that you choose, whether it's ribbon or folded fabric, fabric with an edge. You get a different effect. So I'll just show you that today. Now the key to have this nice rounded texture in your stitching is to choose the fabric wisely. So you can choose fabric that coordinates, contrasts, or you can even use the same piece of fabric, just cut into different strips. It's really the texture that you're going for. If I wanted something really elegant, I'd probably use the same color fabric, the same piece of fabric, maybe an all white or a dark, and it's just the shadows that play off the piece. In this one, it's the beautiful bold colors that contrast to the background very nicely. So to do that, I look through my fabric scraps and I find coordinated fabric. So here I have some beautiful fabric with teals and blues, golds and oranges. So I'll just take some of the fabric that I have, and these are just scraps, and I fold it and I make the tabs. Now I can be really precise so I don't have much waste of the fabric, or I can just fold it in half since I know I'm going to make a series of them. So I'll start with this piece here, and that's going to be about the width that I want. It's approximately the width of all my little fabric scrap pieces, or I can cut them down to make them that width. So I'll put this down on my piece wherever I want to create that little fabric interest, kind of get the piece lined up correctly, and then I just tack it down with a few stitches. So I'll take some thread. The stitches really aren't going to show. I just need them to hold this piece in place. So maybe I'll do 3 or 4 stitches. I can do any type of stitch that I like. I just tend to do a straight stitch. I enjoy the feel of pulling that thread through the fabric. So I'll do 3 or 4 stitches just to hold it in place. Leave my thread and my needle together, and I can just play up that little piece. Take another piece of fabric that coordinates, make another loop, and I'll just trim this down just so it's a nicer edge. And I want to just fold that on top of the first roll, covering that stitching, and then I'll make another stitch line, and I like to leave a good spacing. You can vary this, making it tightly spaced together or loosely spaced together. It's totally up to you, and you get a different look. I personally prefer trying to make all the spacing of the pieces match, just to get that interesting texture, almost accordion-like, but rounded. So again, I sew my 4 stitches, leaving my thread intact, and I'll continue down the row here. Speed this along. And now I'll add just one more piece. I can continue and add far more than just the one, but I think I'll just stop here. Now for my last piece, I cut my strip a little longer than normal, just because I don't want that seam showing. If you want the end to show, then you don't have to worry about that. Just trim off the selvage here. It's a little tough to sew through. And then I just fold my piece onto itself so that the seam doesn't show. And I can tack it down right in the center, again, with those same stitches. I go through all the pieces of fabric. And there I have some interesting texture made with just fabric and thread that I can add to additional slow stitching pieces. Now for the second way that I use tabs, and I'm going to just continue this right onto this tag, I just have, again, more scraps of fabric that coordinate with the existing ones just for aesthetics. And I'm just going to sew some tabs right on the side. I'll take my fabric scrap here, decide which way I want it, create the tab, and just put it behind my work. I can put it on top of my piece as well, or I could sandwich my piece. It's really up to you. I'm going to just put it right behind my existing piece. Come up here, go through all the layers, just do a little stitching. And now you can decide if you want to add additional tabs or not. Since this is a reference piece, I do want to add additional tabs. It will help me remember that technique and that design. Now I like my tabs to overlap. You can just have them evenly spaced if you'd like, but I like that overlap. I think I'll come in there with just some of this plain muslin. And I like to vary the height, so I'll pull that one out a little further and just continue stitching. I'll continue stitching down the length and decide where I want that final tab to go. And I think just right back here looks nice. I'm going to trim this down though. I don't need all that extra fabric. I'll knot the piece on the back. And then I like to trim up the excess fabric here. I think it just makes it a little neater. And there I have my sample of 2 different ways that I use fabric tabs in my sewing. I could also use ribbon just as easily. The edge is finished and it's quite nice. And then I'll take this and just add this to my little ring of different fabric texture samples. And I'll include links to all these videos below. So I hope you found those fabric tags useful, both as a textural element and as something to really bring interest to the side of your piece. And by varying the number of tabs you use, you get a totally different effect. I hope you found this video helpful. I'll link the remaining videos in the series down below. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me.